the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
I'm just giving you the answer to the question you're asking all night long. Why do they vote for Donald Trump? It's not always because they like him. No, it's because stuff like that is kookier to them.
Bill Maher just unleashed a brutal takedown on Adam Schiff, absolutely roasting the California senator over his relentless and increasingly hopeless battle against Donald Trump. The insults were so savage that I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Schiff refuses to ever show up on Maher's show again. If you love this kind of spicy, no-holds-barred content, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another fiery moment like this.
I think it's true justice. The only thing he cares about is himself and money, and going after the money is a way to bring about some real justice.
It's the perfect example of pure political justice. Maher didn't hold back, saying Schiff only cares about himself and making money. Going after the money, Maher argued, could be the only way to truly get some justice in this situation. Schiff started the evening, as always, with his typical barrage of attacks against Trump. He painted the former president as a narcissist who cares only about himself. Schiff kept doubling down, claiming that Trump was absolutely guilty of all the accusations stacked against him. He went on to say that Trump was entirely unfit to lead the nation, predicting his return to power would be disastrous for the country. Classic Schiff, lots of accusations, but no solid evidence to back them up, just a lot of political theater. But wait, the best part is coming. Schiff made a statement that would end up haunting him. He said, "I don't share your pessimism about this or your pessimism about the general election.
I don't share your pessimism about this or your pessimism about the general election. The reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
The reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because, at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't step on other people, who has some interest in the American people, something beyond himself. I think, at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure. But here's the kicker. Trump is now the president. Schiff's confident predictions turned out to be spectacularly wrong, leaving him scrambling for excuses. It's pure political karma, and watching it unfold is honestly delicious. As Schiff continued his rant, even Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith were starting to get fed up. Maher kept his cool, barely, but Stephen couldn't hold back. He let loose, saying, "I'm just getting tired of seeing all this stuff aimed at him.
And I'm just getting tired of seeing so much stuff targeted in his direction, but somehow, some way, he still survives." I mean, we're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still going to be running for president. You're President Biden. That's the individual that you're going to have to beat. 4 indictments, 91 counts. They ain't even bringing up the bankruptcies. Ain't even bringing up this particular issue with this civil case. And somehow, some way, he puts cats to shame because he clearly has more than 9 lives. I mean, come on.
Somehow, Trump still survives it all. We're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still running for president. And your President Biden, he's the one you've got to beat. 4 indictments, 91 charges, he's facing so much, including a bankruptcies issue, and he still keeps bouncing back. Cats don't have more lives than Trump. Before Maher even stepped into the fray, Stephen A. Smith called out Adam Schiff and his political allies for their endless years of trying to destroy Trump. They've thrown everything at him. Media smears, endless investigations, digging up scandals from decades ago, comparing him to history's worst villains. They've called him Hitler, labeled him a threat to democracy, and thrown every accusation imaginable. And still, Trump not only survives, but he thrives. Time and again, they think they've taken him down, only for him to come back even stronger. Trump has become the political phenomenon no one can figure out. Love him or hate him, Trump is the riddle that Democrats and their media allies can't crack. And it's driving them absolutely crazy. Finally, Bill Maher jumped in, to slam the Democrats for their policies and tone-deaf ideologies.
The Atlantic put out an article last year, and it was called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense."
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating sports by sex makes perfect sense. And if you think it doesn't, you can't leave the country.
Calling them out for their growing disconnect from everyday Americans. He didn't sugarcoat it. Maher got straight to the point. He ripped into the Democrats for pushing a bizarre and unpopular agenda, like the push to allow men to compete in women's sports. To many Americans, it's not just absurd, it's insulting to basic common sense. Instead of listening to the public outcry, the Democrats doubled down, labeling any dissent as bigotry. Maher hit the nail on the head, arguing that this kind of extreme ideology only pushes voters further into Trump's camp. When given a choice between chaos and someone who at least seems grounded in reality, people will choose the latter every time. And then came the bombshell. Schiff was asked about Biden's preemptive pardons, which seemed to protect him and others from the fallout of the January 6th investigation. But here's where it gets interesting. Schiff came out against Biden's pardons, suggesting that they weren't necessary. Schiff, who benefited from these pardons, subtly threw Biden under the bus by claiming they were a mistake. So why did Biden issue them in the first place if the actions of the January 6th committee were above board?
Senator Schiff, given the ongoing political tensions and Trump's actions toward his critics, do you think President Biden's preemptive pardons turned out to be more important than initially expected? Let's first tell people what that means, preemptive pardons. That was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
This move is textbook political maneuvering. Take cover when it's convenient, then deny it when the situation gets messy. Schiff's attempt to distance himself from Biden's decision makes it clear. The cracks are starting to show, and Biden's team is likely scrambling behind the scenes. Bill Maher called him out for this, slamming mainstream media for their biased reporting. When Maher questioned the credibility of news outlets, it was a shocker. Even a New York Times journalist, Bret Stephens, admitted he couldn't fully trust his own publication. I read about it, but I don't know. Do you trust anything? Maher asked, pressing Stephens on the issue. When even insiders are questioning their own reporting, it's clear that something is wrong with the mainstream media. This is exactly why so many Americans have turned to independent and alternative news sources. They're tired of the spin, the partisan narratives, and the media's endless deflection. Major news outlets have abandoned their once proud role of holding power accountable.
So the FBI came in and arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too?
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Well,
morphing into partisan propaganda machines. It's disheartening to watch how journalism has devolved into mere political theater, confirming what many of us have suspected for years. If you want the truth, you need to go outside the establishment. Maher didn't stop there. He went on to discuss how the cultural shift in society, driven by the left's embrace of woke ideology, led to the unraveling of the family unit. TV shows and movies turned children into miniature adults while portraying fathers as clueless and out of touch. The result? A generation of entitled kids who don't respect authority or boundaries. Discipline became taboo, respect for family structure eroded, and moral values were tossed aside in favor of performative progressivism.
Schools are popular now, even with people who aren't Catholic, because it's the last place you can send your kid to get an old school education. And they just tell the kids, forget about the Jesus stuff. Just, To them, that's okay indoctrination, as opposed to some of the other indoctrination that goes on. And also, the Catholics don't put up with bullshit. They take your phone, you have to learn your P's and Q's and your grammar and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I just don't understand, that parents don't have the whip hand anymore. Not that you should actually use a whip. And I don't have kids, so I don't know that firsthand, but every movie and TV show that has a teenager in it cannot be mischaracterizing this. And the kids just, they don't listen to their parents, they turn their back on them, they walk out of the room, things that would just get me shut down when I was a kid.
These ideological shifts led to the Democrats' downfall in 2024. One Democrat even said, "I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. They should be on high alert, treating Trump with the seriousness he deserves." He's right. Trump's 74 million votes weren't a fluke. But instead of acknowledging this, the Democrats blindly continued to push Joe Biden, despite growing concerns about his cognitive decline. Even as signs of Biden's unfitness for office became impossible to ignore.
I respect the fact that you don't share my pessimism. I truly do. I understand where you're coming from. But I think that's part of the problem. I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. I think they should be on high alert. I think they need to treat him with the seriousness that it deserves, because you having a lot of faith in the American people. The man did get over 74 million votes. You've got people that are looking at Joe Biden. I'm not going to call him a cognitive mess or anything like that. That's very disrespectful. I would never speak about our president that way. But when you're 82 years of age, it's not offensive to say you're no longer a spring chicken and you don't seem to have.
The left kept shielding him from criticism. The result? The party's credibility collapsed. To make matters worse, they foolishly elevated Kamala Harris in a desperate bid to salvage the party's reputation, only to see her approval ratings plummet and her public appearances become an embarrassment. What was once a strategic powerhouse turned into a party scrambling to clean up their mess. Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith's frustration is a reflection of a larger awakening in America. Voters are fed up with being gaslit. They're done with the media spin, the political theater, and the endless deflection. Trump's resilience isn't just about him. It's about a nation pushing back against a broken system. The left tried to control the narrative, but the reality is louder than any spin they can create. Even their own voices are starting to question everything they once defended. And here's where it all boils down to the bigger picture: the Democrats' consistent failure to listen to the American people. Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith both made it clear. Americans are sick of being lectured by elites who are completely out of touch with the everyday struggles of regular citizens. They're tired of the far-left ideologies that have slowly poisoned the political landscape. The Democrats have spent so much time trying to push their radical agenda that they've alienated the very people they claim to represent. And all the while, Trump's popularity keeps soaring. What's even more mind-blowing is how the left continues to shoot themselves in the foot over and over again. They've pushed their woke ideologies so far that they've lost the ability to connect with ordinary voters who just want common sense to prevail. From the battle over biological reality in sports to pushing gender ideology down everyone's throats, they've become completely detached from basic principles that most Americans still hold dear. And instead of listening to the growing backlash, they double down, calling anyone who disagrees bigoted or outdated. Well, guess what? People aren't buying it anymore.